and welcome to 21st Century Faith. This is the second episode of our brand new series. We hope you're enjoying it. We'd love to hear what you think. I've been really looking forward to today's episode. We hope to have something really inspiring in store for you. But first, we're going to have a quick message, we hope you enjoy it. We'll be back in a moment. Hope in Action is coming to Dunfield House this March, and you're invited. Join Community of Christ for the European Peace Colloquy, a weekend conference for anyone who longs for justice, healing, and real grounded peacemaking in today's world. Across 3 days, you'll hear from frontline activists, psychologists, faith leaders, and people shaping the future. We're talking personal well-being in turbulent times, humanising migrants, digital safety, confronting violence with courage, and imagining communities where every soul has worth. Expect workshops, music, stories that move you, and space to breathe again. Visit Dunfield House for the European Peace Colloquy from the 20th to the 22nd of March 2026. Early bird booking is available. If you're hungry for hope and ready to put it into action, Dunfield House in Herefordshire is the place to be. For more information, contact 21st Century Saints or Community of Christ UK via our Facebook pages. Okay, welcome back, folks. Today we are taking you inside the European Peace Colloquy. Now, this is a bold weekend that's become a catalyst for real-world peacemaking. It's held at Dunfield House. It brings together activists, thinkers, and ordinary people who are hungry for justice and hope with teeth. Today we're joined by Andrew Bolton himself, who's one of the organisers, and we're going to talk about its purpose, its vision, and what is going to make this year so electric. So let's dive in. First of all, Andrew, would it be okay if we get you just to say hi and tell the audience just a little bit about who you are and what your background is?
Okay, so I'm Andrew Bolton. I'm from the north of England. I grew up 70 miles south of the Scottish border. My dad was a World War II British soldier, and I'll say a little bit about that at the end. But that's where my energy for peace and justice comes from. It's not academic. It's out of my gut-wrenching childhood.
I love that, and so let's just take this in order. And when I say I love that, I mean I love that you've shared something so vulnerable. I really appreciate that, because I think this work, I think it's really important that this work is informed by lived experience. So let's just go back to, I hadn't actually ever heard of the term colloquy even before. So can you take us through a quick bit of history? Where did the peace colloquy come from, and why does it exist particularly within the faith space, Community of Christ?
So colloquy is a word I had to look up. So it means conversation. It's a posh word for conversation. And it was invented by Barb Higdon, who was then president of Graceland, had just been president of Graceland University. So, and she was an English teacher, so she could use big words. So it means peace conversation. So the Community of Christ Temple in Independence, Missouri, was opened in 1993. The temple's dedicated to the pursuit of peace, reconciliation, and healing of the spirit inspired by the Redeemer of the world. It's a peace temple. Its purpose is to remind us of Jesus's peace and justice mission among the poor and the brutally colonized people 2,000 years ago in Palestine. Where does it come from? Well, Kirtland Temple in Ohio was dedicated March 1836. It was a place of Holy Spirit, a Pentecostal season, and also a place of worship and learning. So the Community of Christ Temple in Independence is a place of learning and worship, learning about peace and justice and healing, inspired by the Spirit of Jesus, and worship so that we go out of its doors to change the world. The Peace Colloquy is a powerful learning experience, and you said it better than I've done. It was pioneered by a Dr. Ed Glazer, an amazing educationalist who had a big job in the United States. He was president of the Community College Association. And he was passionate about peace, a lovely human man. And the first peace colloquy, or the trial run, was at Kirtland Temple in 1985. The second one was in Washington, D.C., in his congregation in 1989. And the third one was the Independence Temple in 1993 with Bob Higdon inventing the term peace colloquy. So peace colloquy is training disciples for peace, but it's an encouragement to anyone who wants to make the world better. All are welcome.
I had been thinking a lot about the fact that the peace colloquy exists today. Um, we spend a lot of time on our sister podcast, 21st Century Saints. Sarah, my co-host, and I spend a lot of time being angry or frustrated or tackling some of the issues that are causing a lot of heartbreak. And so for others, we're conscious of the needs for this work of peace and justice. For ourselves, I think it gets to be pretty heavy sometimes. And of course, as we look around what's going on today, you just have to switch on the news. And there's this inspiring work that is being done. For example, I am so inspired by the idea of the Singing Resistance in Minneapolis. There's some incredible pioneering work that is being done. And I love that the peace work sits alongside justice within Community of Christ. That's one of the core things that you focus on. What what does the peace colloquy look like today? What's today's version of the peace colloquy?
So it's still training disciples of Jesus in the ways of peace. And it's not just for Community of Christ members. Um, I did 11 peace colloquies in the temple, and um, maybe a third or more of the participants were not Community of Christ members. So it's for all people interested, even just curious about peace. The last big peace colloquy in the temple was in 2014, and then it became regionalized. Australia, Latin America, Europe, different parts of the United States. So Latin America actually is in the lead. They've done more than anybody else. A small woman who's now an apostle is the inspirer of it. So it's still making disciples of peace.
I'm going to later on, I think, come back and ask about this. You'd mentioned regionalizing it. I think that is fascinating to me, and I think so important in what happens with implementing it, with making it, with putting it into action. Now, I have a question, and it's really sort of coming from Sarah's lens, but it's one of the most common things that I think I hear when we see the work of faith communities or any secular organization that is coming around to talk about peace, that's working with others to talk about peace. And that is around, is this just more talk? Is this just, an exercise in navel gazing? Everyone gets together, talks about peace, feels like they've done their job, a box is ticked, and then they can go away and live a happy life, feeling like they've done something when action hasn't actually happened. Could you talk a little bit about?
I'm shocked by the question.
You've never heard that question, right?
Yeah. Peace colloquy is exactly the opposite.
Mm.
How can talking about human rights, the devastation of war, restorative justice as opposed to punishment justice in our criminal system, conversations on peace between different faiths, just economics. I mean, capitalism sucks. Climate change, migration justice. How can those things be navel gazing or internal talk? So it's true we talk, but it's talk to then go out and be inspired. And the structure of the temple is really interesting. You come up the worshipper's path that prepares you for worship. You come into the sanctuary and you look up 200 feet. And then you go out of the peace doors into a map of the world to change the world.
That is beautiful. The imagery and the symbolism, I love it. But what I love the most is that, and I mean this in such a complimentary way, the little hint of righteous indignation at the question, because you're absolutely right. You know, to make any kind of change starts with conversation. Otherwise, we're just responding, and not that that's a bad thing. But it's the knee-jerk response, the things that so often we get wrong, the things that often do more harm. And if we aren't doing that in dialogue with other people, then yeah, what is the plan? How does it last? How does it stick? Um, and of course, if I want to go, just my personality, if I want to go to do something, to give my time, you want it to be meaningful, you want it to be useful, but also I want there to be a little bit of fire in the belly of people who are there. And if that's the kind of attitude that's brought, I love that. So yeah, I think it sounds like a really exciting thing. Um,
And it's people finding each other. So am I the only crazy one that cares about this?
right?
And then you're with 1,000 people that are thinking the same way, and you find you're not alone anymore. You're in solidarity.
Yes. And then the worst possible scenario for me is when I've had a dialogue with someone, and my son is notorious for doing this to me, where I think I've got well thought out answers and solutions, and I know what I want to do, and then suddenly there is another perspective. I think, oh, how did I miss that? Um, Not that necessarily it might even make me change my mind, but it's so important to know what those other perspectives are. So yeah, I love this. Um, what what is lighting you up about the actual program? What are you most looking forward to?
So I'm looking forward to the whole lot. So we've three major themes. There's conflict and personal well-being is the first. And James Rathbun, a National Health Service clinical psychologist and an elder in the church, will give the keynote and is not boring. We have a GP, Lowry from South Wales, give a workshop on conflicting advice about medicine on the online. How do you sort out what's true and healthy and what's dubious? And then we have a workshop on lobbying councillors and MPs. And Misha Ilasbarashvili, I have difficulty saying his name, from Georgia, will talk about working with Russian and Ukrainian young men who are refusing to fight. Did you know that perhaps there's 700,000 Russian young men who are refusing to fight? 700,000, that's 7 times bigger than the British Army. And Misha will be sharing with us about their mental health issues, isolated, refugees, unwelcome in Georgia, but given temporary sanctuary, separated from their family, um, uncertain about whether they have a future that's secure. So, so that's going to be important. And then we have three workshops on migration justice. You'll meet Zain, a refugee from Pakistan, who's a wonderful human being, but was 12, 14 years in the British refugee system. And it's not kind. We'll have church member migrants from French Polynesia telling of their experiences in France. Joseph Williams, don't tell anyone, a civil servant, will talk about modern slavery and trafficking. And we have 3 workshops on digital harm and digital peacemaking. And there's a keynote by 2 Australian church members. One's a professor, expert on this, in a keynote about the recent banning of social media for those under 16. Well, this will be helpful for us in the UK. We've just produced a statement on nonviolence in Community of Christ, and we'll have a panel of academics and activists critically discussing this, taking it apart, praising it, and saying where it's perhaps finding wanting. But what am I looking forward to most? It's an hour of singing songs of peace and justice on Saturday evening. The communal singing is amazing at Dunfield.
I wouldn't have, I would have probably, I hate to admit this because I love communal singing when it's happening, but if I had heard about this, as part of the program of events, I would have put that in the sort of happy, clappy, navel gazing sort of part of things. That's the stuff the hippies are going to go and do while the discussions are happening over here. And it isn't until I saw the power of what music, song, people showing up in that way together, communal singing can do in the world. So I think particularly this year, that's going to be super powerful. But how exciting that, because all of the things that I would normally associate with the work of peace and justice, immigration, war, all of the things that are relevant just now, to also have medication, the online world. We're just releasing a short today about sextortion scams and its impact and how best to deal with this. This is where safeguarding is happening, and that's the place we want to be. And I love, you'll come back to the music again, the singing again, that community is being built around that. Yeah, it sounds incredibly exciting.
We have Welsh voices there.
Oh, come on.
They sang socialism into being.
Ah. And let's face it, a Welsh choir, there is nothing like it. Oh my God. Right. Okay. We need to be thinking about signing up people. If that hasn't, do just now is we'll just take a moment to be. So we'll have a look at hope. Across 3 days, you'll hear from frontline activists, psychologists, faith leaders, and people shaping the future. We're talking personal. If you're hungry for hope and ready to put everyone, it is in other places. This is very exciting to me. Part of what happens is the European Peace Awards. I didn't realise this was part of the Peace Colloquy. Could you talk a little bit about what the European Peace Award is, why it matters, and where it fits within the Peace Colloquy?
An outstanding peacemaker who's an encouragement to us. And there's no money, but there's a plaque. And we want to share some inspiring words to us. They give us an address. So, perpetrators of war and injustice strengthen my resolve. They are good news among all the bad news. So the Nobel Peace Prize is the big Peace Prize, 1901. It began. The Community of Christ Peace Award, given on behalf of the whole. This year's European Peace Award will be given to Philip Austin, who has worked for the Quaker Northern Friends Peace Board
how did people nominate it?
So we advertised throughout the church in Europe and the British
Uh-huh.
Isles. And then the committee that's been planning the Peace Colloquy met with Gillian, uh, Vincent as Mission Centre President, and Wayne Farmer. Uh, we decided by common consent who should be our choice. We
I
had
love that.
5 nominations, I think.
And I'm joking about it, but realistically, these types of things often are very politicized. And with the best of respect to the Nobel Peace Committee, I think it possibly means something different today than it did in the past. Um, what's your hope? What message do you hope that this award communicates to the wider community?
Ordinary people, but committed, can make a difference.
Oh, I love it. Now, this is a slight aside. We're going to take a little bit of a U-turn because he will hate that I'm saying this. Andrew's going to be seriously displeased. But a reason why a lot of people like to, people love Andrew Bolton, right? This man is a very cool man with a very cool history. And so, yeah, to be able to go and hang out with so I want to tell people just a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing, just as a bit of a breather. You've had some books released this year. You've been working very hard. How, if at all, do the books that you've just had released connect with your work of peace and justice?
So I've only had one released in the last few months. The next one's coming out in next January. So
Oh,
we'll talk about that then.
awesome.
So the book that came out recently is called Living the Sermon on the Mount in Difficult Times. In the first part, I do a commentary on the Sermon on the Mount. What is what is Jesus actually saying? What does it mean in the context of the brutal Roman Empire? Why is it radical, revolutionary? Then I look at how Christians have either lived or not lived it. So, do you know it delighted Gandhi as a young student beyond measure when he first read it? A Christian from Manchester gave it to him when he was a student in London. He then read it every day for 40 years. Look what trouble that got him into. So, I'm inviting people to read the Sermon on the Mount, live it, and get into big trouble.
This is a man who loves people getting in trouble for good causes, right? We can tell.
And there's a footnote here. So some of our listeners will have read the Book of Mormon, and we have the Sermon on the Mount a second time in the New Testament of the Book of Mormon. Jesus preaches it all over again, and it's still really radical. In fact, perhaps even more radicalized because it connects it with baptism. So we of all people should take the Sermon on the Mount twice as seriously as other Christians.
I am really hoping you'll come back and talk about this because like you say, it's a radical idea when we break it down and give it the thought that it deserves. Absolutely. Um,
And the good news is I can send you some information to get 40% discount.
Oh, yes, right. And we'll put that in the show notes. So when you're listening to this, just go down to the notes. If for any reason you can't find it, just send us a message in the podcast here through our social media channels, or you can get in touch with Community of Christ and they'll be able to tell you how to get that 40% off. That is very, very cool. Thank you for sharing. Okay, Community of Christ, because you this is an organization, this is a faith community that is very concerned with peace and justice. And now, was it just in the past week, I think, there was a an incredibly direct call for members to act boldly for peace and justice. Could you perhaps maybe summarize what that message was and what that invitation means to you?
So it came from the first presidency, the two women and an African. Uh, Bunda Chibwe from Zambia speaks 5 languages. He's one of our best theologians in the church. Um, so the letter delighted and surprised me. It's the one of the boldest letters I've ever seen from the first presidency. So two things stand out. Um, it says you can start locally without asking for permission. Just follow the Spirit. And the second thing, it says we're not called to watch history. We're called to shape history for good, for peace, for justice, to end war, poverty, and climate change. So I really liked that. In fact, I wrote to Stacy, our beloved prophet, uh, and said, I really, really liked it. And she replied almost immediately. So,
It is, I think, especially when you see it in light of what's actually happening, I think we know what it's talking about. It's talking about what is going on around you right now and in the future. And coming from a background where, yeah, permission has to be sought. How will this be approved of? We need you or feel like we need some kind of community approval. To have that, to say it's already been granted is incredible. I think there's some fantastic statements within that letter, and we'll link to it because I think it's really worth reading. I certainly know it was mentioned that incredible work is being done by not just members of Community of Christ, but by faith communities in general. But incredible, in particular, I think there's a few people from Community of Christ who are doing incredible work in Minneapolis right now. Um, it is so inspiring. That's the kind of piece that I'm interested in. That's the kind of work I'm interested in. Um, and I think whenever we hear, people suggesting that what you can do is very limited, what the work of peace, we're never going to get world peace, right? Except, well, we are because I've decided that's what I'm going to work to achieve. People told Sarah and I we would never get safeguarding happening within the LDS faith tradition. We got safeguarding. I am not interested in people who are telling me what I can't do. And so I'm very excited to have conversations with people who are doing and who are making plans to do. So this is very, very practical. I need a pragmatic approach, I guess is what I'm saying. And this this is that. Um, the statement from Community of Christ about peace and justice to me is a very pragmatic one. If you feel called to go and do something, you're invited to do so. I love it. So with that in mind, I am surrounded by people who have no faith affiliation. My bestie, Sarah feels apathetic to faith and is, my husband has no faith background and really doesn't have a lot of interest in it. But this colloquy sounds really good. So I guess what I want to ask is, in part, do people need a church background to come? But I think really what I'm asking is, are people going to show up and be given religion, if that makes sense?
so this is a really good question. Um, so my best teacher at school was a humanist, but he really cared about other people and about me and about other kids. So there are some fantastic people really committed to doing peace and justice, but don't have a faith in God. but they have a faith in making the world a better place. And I work joyfully alongside them. So Peace Colloquy is if you're interested in peace, you're welcome. Um, so we'll have Community Christ peace activists there. We'll have a couple of Muslims there. We'll have some Quakers there. We'll have agnostic speakers also, but all of them committed to nonviolent peace and justice making.
Awesome.
So it changed. So the focus on the mission of Jesus, the mission of peace and justice in our world, uh, changes how we look at each other.
I love it. Yeah, because I think when you're in dialogue, the faith background sort of is almost an incidental thing. I think unless people think they're being spoon-fed something or that they don't have a choice, that there's some kind, I guess what I'm saying is that there's some kind of agenda behind the agenda. And in all honesty, and I say this with complete truth, having walked alongside Community of Christ for years, I know Sarah would completely agree with me on this. There is no agenda. Community of Christ people have just wanted to be mates, and it's a very powerful thing to know that someone cares about you without agenda and will show up for you without agenda. So I love that. Um, this is fantastic. Can you remind us again, when is it? How do people sign up to attend? What will that look like? What do we need to do?
So it's March the 20th to the 22nd. It's a weekend. So it's just a month ago, a month ahead. And if you email me, so that's Andrew. So the email address, and we'll give that in the notes, is a Bolton and then 2 @live.com.
And we can pass that on. And
Yeah.
if I think on the social media channels, there will be more information about it. We will keep repeating it so that you can find out more. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to find out what you need to know. But yes, a weekend in the most beautiful surroundings. I think hopefully the advert is giving people a sense of this beautiful Dunfield house, which is just a fantastic setting, which I've never been to. So I'm very, very keen to come and see. So we've got lots and lots of information. This is fantastic. I want to finish with a question. If someone listening today feels overwhelmed by the world, what encouragement would you give them?
So I'm going to use religious language now because I think it's helpful. Uh, Crucifixion Friday is happening every day. The second beatitude promises this: blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. So if you're mourning the state of the world, it means you care and want things to change. So today is Crucifixion Friday for millions of people around the world. But know beyond any shadow of doubt that Resurrection Sunday is coming. Zion will be, war will be over, poverty will be done, families will find healing. Zion is the passion of God, the passion of the Holy Spirit embodied in Jesus. We don't walk alone. There's a power in the universe that wants this to happen. And I remember also the first beatitude: blessed are the poor in spirit. So for the people who are overwhelmed, they're poor in spirit. And it says, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So blessed are the discouraged, for theirs is the kingdom of God on earth. Zion for all is coming. How do I know? I already hinted at the beginning. I grew up in poverty with a mentally ill dad, traumatized by his experiences in World War II as a British soldier. I'm one of four boys. It was hell at times. I'm so grateful for the strength of my mother. And I prayed. that God would make my dad better. And it took 5 years, from the age of 8 till I was 13. And he came home sober on one Tuesday. And on Friday, the next drinking day, he came home sober again. And so it continued. He found healing, and so did my family. So I know the journey from grief and devastation to the hope of Zion. So I'll see you at the European Peace Colloquy, 20th to the 22nd of March. We can talk more.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for being with us. Again, we will share links so that you can find out how you can come and be part of the incredible work that's being done. I'm calling it Peace with Teeth. We're not just sitting around chatting. This is a real work that's being done, and I'm so excited that it's happening this year. So, I'm going to leave you with a message. Again, we hope you've enjoyed the show. Please get in touch. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks, everyone. Hope in Action is coming to Dunfield House this March, and you're invited. Join Community of Christ for the European Peace Colloquy, a weekend conference for anyone who longs for justice, healing, and real grounded peacemaking in today's world. Across 3 days, you'll hear from frontline activists, psychologists, faith leaders, and people shaping the future. We're talking personal well-being in turbulent times, humanising migrants, digital safety, confronting violence with courage, and imagining communities where every soul has worth. Expect workshops, music, stories that move you, and space to breathe again. Visit Dunfield House for the European Peace Colloquy from the 20th to the 22nd of March 2026. Early bird booking is available. If you're hungry for hope and ready to put it into action, Dunfield House in Herefordshire is the place to be. For more information, contact 21st Century Saints or Community of Christ UK via our Facebook pages.